now time for our keynote session, The Evolving Talent Landscape by Dr. Balasubramaniam, Member, Human Resource Capacity Building Commission. Dr. R. Balasubramaniam is a development scholar, public policy advocate, and leadership educator with over 4 decades of grassroots experience. He is the founder of the Swami Vivekanand Youth Movement, a development organization working at the intersection of health, education, and community empowerment in India. A physician by training and a Harvard-educated public leader, and a former faculty at Cornell University, Dr. Balu is also the founder of GRAM, a public policy think tank. His work spans advising governments on governance reforms, strengthening democratic institutions, and building state capacity. He is also the chairperson of the Social Stock Exchange Advisory Committee of SEBI. Dr. Balasubramaniam, we welcome you on stage, sir. Can we have a huge round of applause as he joins us?
I was spending the last 15 minutes actually wondering whether Financial Express team got the person right for the keynote. Because I was just wondering, looking at the audience, looking at such wonderful HR leaders from across the country, one thought that could possibly come to your mind is, what would the government, somebody from HR from the government, be able to tell to this corporate world sitting in front of us? Well, then I told myself, the simplest I can do, because I'm not a tech person in that sense, but we do use a lot of tech in government, and you'll all be, I thought, let me at least throw in a few surprises to all of you. Sometimes I do feel we in the government, especially in HR, a little ahead of the curve than the private sector in India. So I'm going to possibly throw some light on, first, why are we doing what we're doing, and then say, what exactly are we doing? 4 years ago, when I'm an outsider to government, so let me confess that first. So coming into government as a citizen activist from the grassroots, all my life I spent living with indigenous tribals in the forest. That makes it all the more confusing, why am I here? And then spent a good part of 15 years teaching at the Industrial Labor Relations School at Cornell. When I started teaching, I was part of a committee along with the dean where we were asked to relook at the slogan of the school. And the reason why we were asked to relook at it was, the then slogan was, understanding the future of work. And this was 15 years ago. And after 2-3 iterations of this committee and several other people who sat together, we realized that the simplest way to live our lives was to remove the slogan from the board. Because it's not going to be possible and this was 15 years ago. You really can't unpack the future of work. And today, as I was hearing the compere talk about the future of work, it resonated in my mind, the complexity and the challenge that we're all facing. And though it looks life as usual, it isn't. AI has been a great disruptor. Last 4 years in government, at least 2.5 years, has been the world of ChatGPT and all the large language models that's getting thrown around. And so when we talk to the different secretaries at government from the commission and we ask them what is it that they would like their people to learn, the standard slogan we get back is emerging technologies. Now that's a huge basket out there and you can dump everything into that basket. But what I discovered, and I'll stick to just what I'm expected to speak here, is what are we looking at? And for those of you who don't know government too well, we don't really have an HR in government. We have a DOPT in the national level and then the general administration departments in states. Generally, it's just public administration that the state understands and very little public HR that the state understands, till recently. But today, like I said, we are running in leaps and bounds. And so for us, especially for me who spent close to 4 decades, civil society, advising governments, being advisor to several governments, being in the national government here, advising corporate leaders and boards, it just struck me that how little we actually know of HR, but how powerful HR could actually be in a world which is rapidly seen to be more and more tech-driven. I think we are at a very, very strange time in human history where the ability to comprehend the scale, the scope, and the speed of what is happening around us, it's not going to be easy. And those of us who can crack that code possibly will outshine and outlast the others in the game. So when we first came in, when I first took charge, it was a very simplistic role is what I thought. And we were told that you have 3.2 million civil servants to oversee. I thought, that's all, 3.2 million. And then gradually we discovered it is 20 million in the national government. If you add up public sector banks, public sector undertakings, etc. And then gradually, year after year, with the pace at which our Honorable Prime Minister moves, he said, no, no, our job is all states also. And so once the states started signing their MOUs with us, with our 22, 23 states in the country working with us, we realized we have 4 crore civil servants that technically I'm overseeing. So if you can call me a glorified CHRO of the Government of India, it won't be wrong. And 40 million civil servants is a huge mind-boggling number. Just to understand, do we need them? What do we do with them? How do we use them? Those are questions you ask later. But in a world where a generation believed that government job was the in thing to do, and where even today government jobs are a currency for politics, it's a huge task to even ask questions like performance, efficiency, effectiveness, leave alone talk about evolving talent in a world of AI. That's much, much later, is what I thought. But then the government set up something called the Mission Karma Yogi, which we are the custodians of Mission Karma Yogi, the world's largest transformational program anywhere attempted in the public HR system. What all of us read about, and it's very glamorous when you talk about Doji and what all the noise that we heard in the United States and the slashing and the burning and all that. But the bottom line is the United States actually had failed when it tried to transform its bureaucracy. President Clinton set up a committee similar to what we are, the Capacity Building Commission. He set up with his vice president heading it, even before technology had gone this far. Keeping technology as the foundation then, President Al Gore, I think, chaired it, and they called it Reinvention the US government. All they managed was to possibly slash 250,000 employees, but then within the next 10 years, it quadrupled. So if technology had really progressed and had been used by the system, the number of people who have been removed wouldn't have multiplied 4 times to be back inside the government. But in India, we are at a different point in time. We are at a point in time where we didn't talk about reforming the bureaucracy. We are talking about transforming the bureaucracy. And you'll be surprised how it aligns to technology. The mandate given to us when we met the Prime Minister for the first time and said, what's our job? What do we do? He said 3 simple things. And it sounds very simple in the sentence formation, but then as you get down to business, and I'll connect it to a technological evolution that the state is undergoing now. The first thing he said was very simple. Karmachari bhav se in logo mein karmayogi bhav aana chahiye. Now that sounds a nice sloganish statement, right? Ordinary public servant being paid for his money for the job he does, that itself is damn good in our country. And for him to evolve and think like somebody who's got nothing to be expecting in return, like the spirit of the Bhagavad Gita and the Karma Yoga, that's asking a lot. But how does technology even play here? How does it even make sense? I'll possibly connect the dot in a few minutes. But the second mandate he said, and that's something which is extremely powerful, and I think that's exactly the core of how talent has to evolve in the AI world, and that's where AI can never beat the human spirit. He said, the national or the government, any government in the world, not just India, understands and operates from the paradigm of rule-based thinking. You remove rules, it will be chaos. The government itself exists to ensure chaos doesn't happen and order is created. Whether order is created by whatever forms of governance, whether it's democratic or otherwise, still it's for order. And the system is supposed to make sure that rule-based thinking drives the entire HR frameworks. If you remove the mandate of rules, you remove the government's power itself. And then you can't even understand what will happen to the countries anywhere. And so he said, from a rule-based thinking, a rule-based approach, can we shift India's public HR management to a role-based approach? Now, to even internalize roles, whether it's private sector, I have advised companies, I have advised boards, I have advised now governments, and I've realized we all fall in love with titles, and we misunderstand titles for roles. And we are so deeply enmeshed in our titles that we get carried away by the words like executive vice president and executive assistant. For all you know, that person is a glorified personal assistant. But then we in HR have a way of hyping up what is supposed to be a job that we do, that we are still only finding new words to describe the job description word. But in reality, if you go deep down, what technology has actually done today is it has disrupted this very linear thinking, especially in India. It was very linear. If you'd asked my father what he wanted to be all his life, he would have said, and that's what I grew up in. The fodder every day was you get educated. And then what do? You take a job. And after you take a job, what do? You retire. So the linearity of education, job, retirement was the only thing we all knew. But I can tell you today, the way my team is a lot of young 22, 23-year-olds up to 30, and it's a joy working with them. It's also a huge challenge working with them. As much as it is a joy, it's also a challenge. And when I ask myself, what? Because these children don't understand the linearity of life. And it is so fascinating when you watch and just observe them and the way they do it. For them, the way they operate, it's no longer static jobs anymore. For them, it's all about, they talk about fluid capability architectures and stuff like that. And this sounds nice words, but when you actually look at it, that's exactly how you look at people. You don't look at people by job descriptions, you look at teams by what capabilities they bring to the table. And the Capacity Building Commission's job itself is just that. What capabilities do we bring into our civil services that systems can get delivered? So operating in systems, operating in this kind of a thinking, the national government has already started. We have now in government several designations, but we recognize there are only 3 levels in which people can operate, whether AI is there or not there. It's simple. At a certain point in life, you're very operational, a DM in the district or an SDM, or the director in the government of India. They're all extremely hands-on operational, and any tool that they can use to deliver better help them in their operations. For them, an evolution is not just a promotion. It's something much more deeper, because they're going to transition from an operational role to a tactical role. And in a nation which is now nearly the 3rd largest economy in the world, but still doesn't have enough per capita incomes, and we're struggling to actually keep upping it, it's not easy to balance this. A strategic vision of 2047 with tomorrow's needs of distributing free food to 70% of the country. Now, how do you really evolve from one role to the other, and how do you use technology for this, if at all technology can be rolled into it? How do you build capabilities of institutions and the mandate? Because the third mandate I didn't speak that we have given was something fascinating, because COVID thought possibly gave this idea to the Prime Minister. He said, we have to actually make a bureaucracy future ready. Now, we couldn't even define the future of work at Cornell. And here coming and telling a bureaucracy to become future ready, I thought it's a complicated task for me. Because you really can't define the future. All that you can do is build resilience and the learning ability in the system to keep preparing itself for whatever future demands of you. That's all you can do. And that's why we decided our bureaucracy, when we say we are future ready, all that we can do is engage them in lifelong learning. And many of you will be pleasantly surprised that that journey has begun, where this year the government recently said, if you don't demonstrate competencies proportionate to the role that you're playing, your annual performance report is going to get definitively affected. We even have situations where if I don't make sure that people working with me in my teams, their capacities are not built, my APAR is going to get affected. So capability architecture is now getting systematically structured into the thinking, where systems respond to capacity needs of that system's performance. So we are redefining performance in government today. We are redefining standards of accountability. We are redefining what citizen centricity means. So it is not just the call for Nagarik Devo Bhava that the Prime Minister talks of in Civil Services Day. We actually have deconstructed it to say, what does it mean in everyday performance for the civil servant? All I say may not happen overnight. Change is difficult. But we started with the paradigm. Change is not about change at all. Change is about discovering what to preserve. And that DNA that we need to preserve, the DNA of Seva, public service, is something we held on to. And then say the trash that we accumulated over 75, 76 years, because we inherited a legacy, not of service, but of control. And to change that, forget technology, to even change that attitudinal shift, that karmachari to karmayogi, takes a long time. So we realized the movement is from a workforce to work plus human capital ecosystems. And this year, the call given by the Prime Minister for the Chief Secretary's conference, fascinatingly, is about how do you build human capital in the nation. It's not from a productivity-linked economic definition of human capital, but a much deeper ethics-based, empathy-based understanding of human capital itself. So we in the government, what are we doing? For us, reskilling is not about understanding how to use data better, about how to use digital fluency better. It's about leadership which can understand what digital discernment is. It's not about digital fluency. We have courses on digital fluency, but we actually are thinking about how do you enable a person to discern. Because as much as we love to use ChatGPT, we also know how beautifully it hallucinates, especially when you work in government, where the data of the Indian government possibly is not as much as the data of other countries in the world, and the way it constructs all kinds of absurd things. So for us, techno-ethics is more important than just administration ethics. Because that's a reality. You can't stop a section officer quietly going away to ChatGPT and saying, how do I write this file noting? And for all you know, it will give him some brilliant English. But then is it brilliant thinking is something he has to discern. So we are not saying don't use it. We are building our own LLM, obviously. We're not going to let him use ChatGPT. But he can use the LLM of the government. But at the same time, even that can hallucinate. Let's not forget that. So we need to know, how do I discern? How do I really figure it out? How do I know what is ethical? How do I know what is discrimination in this context of information discrimination, information discernment? So I think the challenge for us has been, how do you get all this done? How do you do it? More importantly for us, it's about how do you humanize technology itself? Because the challenge is not going to be data privacy, equity, and all that. The challenge is going to be, how do you shift? Because the government is a compliance-driven culture. And we are asking them to move towards a value-anchored system. And we are talking about a nation which never had a competency framework. All of your HR experts, 75 years we ran a country without even having a definition of what a competency is. And that is strange for you, because that may be everyday things for you. But in government, the first thing we did, and remember, we are all fond of everything foreign, right? And so some UN agency in 2012 told the government of India, this is what your people need, and gave us a dictionary of competencies with the 256 words, even I can't even remember half of them in the book. Then we said, this is not Indian. Technology can be as much driven by civilizational wisdom as it is by modern science. And we have to discover what is that which is appropriate and rational, not the romanticized versions. So the first thing we did was to build the nation's first public HR competency framework. One of the finest frameworks, I can say, not because I'm the proud parent of it, but because we have tested it for 18 months. We've used it across different situations, from an Anganwadi worker to the cabinet secretary of this nation. I shared it with colleagues around the world, got them to test it out and say, is there something missing, or it can be good? And the proof of the pudding was when one of India's largest corporate VPs called out to me and said, HR, said, can we also use your competency framework for our company? I think when private sector says something in government is good enough, I do feel we must be really good enough. But I'll tell you what we did. We started very small. Again, this is driven by technology, but embedded in India's wisdom. We said all that we as civil servants, you run a company, why do you run it? Your bottom lines are clear. In government, our bottom lines are actually much more easier to discern, but very difficult to measure. For you, we just measure your balance sheet, we know what you are. In government, what is the balance sheet you measure? And so we said we can create a balance sheet that we can measure. We today have the only country in the world with a strategy plan in place. We know exactly what we want to do by 2047. We may achieve it earlier. So we have a goal post out there. We know what are we building capacities for. And by building these capacities, how will we get there? How do we know we're getting there? How do we know we're even undertaking the journey? For this, we said all you need to do is take 4 pledges. I think every Indian needs to take it. The first pledge we said is the pledge of Vikas. The second we said the pledge of Garv, pride. And if you can't take pride in your organization, if you can't take pride in your small department, your divisions, if you can't take pride in being an Indian, if we can't take pride in our languages, in our culture, in our dress, in our food, you are not going to really be able to understand what it is to succeed in a worthful way. The third we said, India never ever civilizationally understood rights. Rights are important, don't get me wrong. But we always said responsibility is what we understood. So this technology can never replace. So kartavya was more important to us. How do you really bring in the sense of responsibility in every civil servant? And therefore, if you have responsibility, you'll use technology also responsibly. You will not abuse it. And finally, we said, in a nation which is complex, which is diverse, we find 100 reasons to fragmentize ourselves. Sitting in this room, I'm sure most of you are sitting based on the people you know at the table you know of. Or if you're a little more socially inclined, you would say, whom do I get to know here which will help me in my business tomorrow? No, we all have a deep transactional appreciation of relationships. But here we said, it's got to be much different. We have to understand not fragmenting, but oneness. A country which can talk of Advaita cannot get two people to talk together for 3 minutes. So we said we got to deconstruct that. And how do you bring in the context of relational appreciation as a competency when you run a government? And what I say looks out of this world, but we have actually been successfully doing it for quite some time. And I think the best things in this country are done very quietly. The more you talk about it, the more the noise that gets created, the more the distractions that happen. So when we say technology, we are running the world's largest learning management system. We got right now, as of today, 1.4 crore people on our platform learning also at something or the other. Every minute, thousands of courses get taken up. We have proctored assessments of competencies. The algorithm will tell you for the role you are playing. We have roles described for every single Government of India employee. The moment I put in my employee ID and say I'm Capacity Building Commission member, human resources, it will tell me these are the competencies you need. These are the behavioral competencies you need. These are the functional competencies you need. And my domain being HR, it will say these are the HR competencies you better pick up. And I go do my proctored assessment of what I'm supposed to be knowing. It will tell me these are red. You're absolutely useless in these. These are orange. We can still manage with you for some time. And these you don't have to worry about. You're good at it. And it'll say, okay, the red is really dangerous. So the algorithm will tell me the next 3 months, what are the courses I need to complete and come back and get my competencies measured again. And I have to demonstrate my competency for the role that I'm playing in Government of India. Eventually, it will be connected to postings and promotions. So mediocrity will no longer be tolerated, whereas excellence will be celebrated. And that takes a long time to do. And thanks to technology, we're doing all this. It's not just we can do it on our own. And we got so much of material up on our website that it is not easy. So we took 2-3 paradigms. The first paradigm we said is the simple 3W paradigm. Understanding the future of work from the limited way of Vikasit Bharat for us. We said, what does work look like? But more importantly, what is the workplace going to look like? 5 years from today, 10 years from today, 15 years from today, how is government going to look like? It's a gig economy. 33% of the British civil service is private sector. It's part-time today. They work 2 days a week, 3 days a week. They go back to the private sector again. So they carry and cross-pollinate ideas. And in India, we can't even get lateral entry. It gets politicized and thrown out of the window. We got hardly 58 people into the system, and then we had to throw them out again. So that is how this is the realities of political economies in our country. But how do you understand the workplace? Why shouldn't a government office look like any other good government office? Why can't your house be the government office? Why should you actually operate from an office at all? Why should so many cars keep coming into the bhavans of this Delhi Lutyens that you see? So we are asking those difficult questions. And finally, we are saying, in this workplace, in this technology-enabled systems, how is the work person going to look like? And we have the realities of affirmative action, social justice. All these are very necessary constitutional safeguards that has to be protected and enabled. But along with that, we got to perform too, in the best possible way that we can. So training institutions have to rediscover themselves. Our academies our brick and mortar academies have to rediscover themselves. We have 800 academies in this country. Maybe some of them may not be necessary anymore. Maybe the digital space will be what we need. So how do you build this? How do we take care of this? We said all you need are 4 gunas in the person who is delivering on this. First is Swadhyay. Can you know yourself? It's not just self-awareness and emotional competencies. In a tech-driven world, do I know myself, my role and my ability to manage tech? Second, we said you can't do it alone anymore. You need to learn to collaborate. Collaborate with AI too. Because AI is not going to remove jobs. But humans who know how to handle AI, they are the ones who are going to succeed in their jobs. And so we want to make our civil servants that good in AI, that they'll use it to succeed in what they do. And we need, because we are still working at enormous deficit of manpower. And it can never be called a deficit because we'll make the remaining people make up and become a surplus for us. So how do we do it? Sahakaryata. How do you embed collaborativeness in every system, every person, in every technology that we bring in? And the third wish is Rajya Karma, functional competencies. Why would I waste my time getting 23 people to look at a file before the cabinet sees the cabinet note? Maybe an LLM can do it, and I'm not exaggerating. Those of you who don't want to take my word for it, please visit Niti Aayog. There's something called the Vikasit Bharat Control Room, where you'll see a huge, well-designed room with all the screens, where if I'm a secretary, let's say of Karnataka, wanting to bring out a child protection policy, all I need to type in, I can access it from my seat in Bangalore, all I need to type in is, this is my population of Karnataka, these are the children that I have, this is the age group breakup that I have. Can you tell me which state in this country has got the best possible child protection policy, and can you redesign a policy for me based on the best that you can scout from the entire world of government governance and design and give it to me in 15 minutes or less, much lesser. It gives me a child protection policy of the state of Karnataka. All I need to do is discerning enough to say, is it telling me what I need to know, topping it up with the real fixes that it needs, and I don't need 23 people below me to write a policy anymore. Now, this is the way we are shaping technology today. So in closing, AI will not replace humans, like I said, but humans who understand AI, who can harness it efficiently, effectively, but more importantly, ethically and intelligently, are the ones who are going to succeed. So to me, it's not a technological revolution that you are having. I think it's a wrong statement. I believe we are missing the point, because what is happening is, what is required is now a moral and a social revolution. As HR leaders, you have the opportunity, the responsibility, and something extraordinary, maybe even the power to build organizations that are resilient, inclusive, and human-centric. So I think it's not about reacting to the change. Just because somebody said ChatGPT, buying the latest software, putting in the latest computer. I think what we need to do is we have to understand that our role has evolved. HR is no longer just public managers or just conflict resolvers or just talking to your unions. You will turn out to be the conscience keepers of your organizations. Sometimes I wonder, in the urgency to build HR of your companies, you may not actually be building HR's capability of HR itself. So somewhere we might miss the what you call the trees for the forest or whatever. So we need to shape the future of HR. Let's do it with clarity, courage, and compassion. I believe if we can so successfully start the journey in Government of India, for the rest of the nation, it's not going to be very difficult. And I can tell you 3 years from today, we have been so confident, our competency framework, we have had the audacity to take IP rights on it. And that is how good it is. And hopefully, the rest of the country will also imitate us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for joining us today. Can we all put our hands together once again for that captivating keynote?